On a scorching summer morning in Atlanta, the routine delivery of FedEx driver Marcus Thompson takes an unexpected turn when he hears a faint, desperate whisper emanating from behind a door. What unfolds is an extraordinary tale of bravery as this compassionate individual grapples with the decision of whether to walk away or risk everything to assist a child in distress. In a world where many tend to avert their gaze, the choice of one person to pause and listen can alter lives forever. However, before we delve into this impactful journey filled with hope and second chances, please share in the comments where you are tuning in from today, and remember to like and subscribe for more inspiring stories. The familiar aroma of freshly brewed coffee permeated the FedEx loading dock as Marcus Thompson arrived for his 6 a.m. shift. At 42 years old, he had been in this line of work long enough to have perfected his morning routine, yet that did not deter him from making the most of each day. "Good morning, Miss Beverly," he called out to the elderly dispatch supervisor, who had been working there even longer than he had. She looked up from her clipboard and offered him a warm smile that always reminded him of his beloved grandmother. "Marcus, dear, you're early again," Beverly remarked, glancing at her watch. "One of these days you're going to wear yourself out." Marcus chuckled as he reached for his thermos. "You know what my grandma used to say? The early bird catches the worm, but the kind bird shares it." He poured a second cup of coffee from his thermos and handed it to Jake, the new driver who had just started last week. The young man's hands trembled slightly as he reviewed his route sheets. "First week jitters?" Marcus inquired, leaning against the truck while Jake gratefully accepted the coffee. "Is it that obvious?" Jake replied with a nervous smile. "I keep worrying that I'm going to mess up the scanner or deliver to the wrong address." "Hey, we all have to start somewhere," Marcus reassured him, pulling out his phone to show Jake a photo of a package he had delivered 7 years ago that had gotten stuck halfway up a tree. "At least you haven't done this yet." The wind caught it just as I was handing it over. The customer thought it was hilarious. Laughter filled the loading dock, and Marcus could see Jake's shoulders relaxing. This was what he cherished about his job, these small moments of connection that brightened everyone's day. As Marcus loaded his truck, he couldn't help but think of his grandmother, who had raised him after his parents died in a car accident when he was just 12 years old. Her wisdom had influenced every facet of his life. "Trust your instincts, baby," she would say. "God gave us instincts for a reason." Even now, 10 years after her passing, he could hear her voice as clearly as if she were standing right next to him. The sun began to rise, painting the sky with hues of pink and orange as Marcus pulled out of the depot. His route took him through the familiar streets of Cedar Grove, a neighborhood characterized by a mix of working-class families and young professionals on the outskirts of Atlanta. Every turn held a story, and every stop featured a familiar face. Right on schedule, he spotted Mr. and Mrs. Chin out for their morning stroll. The elderly couple had been waving to him every morning for the past 5 years, ever since he had helped Mrs. Chin carry a heavy package inside during a rainstorm. "Marcus!" Mrs. Chin called out, waving enthusiastically. "We made too many dumplings again." He pulled over, fully aware that their accidental excess of dumplings had become a regular occurrence. "You two are going to make me too fat to do my job," he laughed, accepting the small container she pressed into his hands. "Nonsense," Mr. Chin replied with a wink. "You need strength for all those packages." A few blocks later, he heard the excited squeals of the Rodriguez kids, ages 6 and 8, jumping up and down on their front porch. Their mother, Eleanor, stood in the doorway with an apologetic smile. "You know what they're waiting for," she called out. Marcus grinned and gave the horn a couple of quick honks, sending the children into fits of delight. This had become their morning ritual ever since he started this route, and their joy was contagious. "You spoil them," Elena said as he handed her a package. "Life's too short not to spread a little happiness," Marcus replied, recalling his grandmother's words. She always said that joy multiplied when shared, like bread broken among friends. The morning continued with its usual rhythm. He delivered a package to Sarah Mitchell, a new mother who appeared to have not slept in days. Her baby boy was fussing in her arms as she struggled to sign for the delivery. "Here, let me hold him for a moment," Marcus offered, and Sarah's relief was palpable as she handed over her son. The baby immediately quieted, captivated by Marcus's deep, gentle voice as he softly sang, "Twinkle, twinkle, little star," another trick his grandmother had taught him. "You're a lifesaver," Sarah exclaimed, quickly signing the scanner. "I haven't had a free hand all morning." Next, he headed to Old Joe's Hardware, where the owner, Joe Martinez, was already waiting by the door. "Right on time, as always," Joe said, offering Marcus a bottle of water. "How's the truck holding up in this heat?" "Can't complain," Marcus replied, helping Joe move boxes inside. "Though the AC is working overtime today." Approaching noon, Marcus checked his scanner for the next delivery. The address was on Maple Street, a part of his route he seldom visited. As he turned onto the quiet street lined with modest, single-story homes, he sensed something was different. The houses here showed signs of neglect, with peeling paint and overgrown lawns, but one house stood out even among its dilapidated neighbors. Maple Street bore a sort of heaviness. The grass was too tall, concealing scattered toys that looked untouched for weeks. The windows were dirty, and one was cracked, partially covered by what appeared to be a blanket instead of proper curtains. The house seemed to sag, as if burdened by a weight too heavy for its foundation. Marcus double-checked the address on his scanner and then retrieved the package from the truck. It wasn't heavy, about the size of a shoebox, but something about it made him feel uneasy. The label indicated it was from an online retailer, addressed to James Wilson. The concrete path leading to the front door was cracked, with weeds pushing through like desperate fingers reaching for the sun. A child's bicycle lay on its side near the steps, its once bright paint now dull and chipping. A deflated basketball rested in a flower bed that held nothing but dirt and cigarette butts. Marcus rang the doorbell, hearing an echo from inside the house. He waited, scanning the property with increasing unease. His grandmother's voice echoed in his mind, urging him to trust his instincts. The door's paint was peeling, revealing layers of different colors beneath, like archaeological evidence of happier times. After a minute with no response, Marcus gently set the package down by the door. As he straightened up, movement caught his eye, a slight shift in the blanket covering the cracked window. That's when he noticed more details that seemed out of place. A small handprint on the window, too fresh to match the general neglect. A purple hair ribbon caught in the overgrown bushes. A torn coloring book page stuck in the screen door, its cheerful butterflies a stark contrast to the gloomy surroundings. Marcus took one last look at the house, unable to shake the feeling that something was amiss. As he turned to leave, his footsteps crunched on the gravel path when he suddenly heard it, a whisper so faint that he almost missed it. A child's voice, trembling with fear, came through the crack in the window. "Help me!" Marcus froze, his heart racing in his chest. The world around him seemed to go silent, save for that desperate whisper echoing in his ears, along with his grandmother's words. God gave us instincts for a reason. He turned back toward the house, every sense now heightened, knowing that his next decision would change everything. The delivery route could wait. Something told him he needed to be here. Marcus's heart thundered as he stood frozen on the cracked walkway. The whisper lingered in the air like a ghost, sending chills down his spine. He turned slowly, his boots crunching on the gravel, and faced the house again. "Hello?" he called softly, taking a cautious step toward the door. "Is someone there?" Silence answered him. The summer heat bore down, making his FedEx uniform cling to his skin, but he barely noticed. He moved closer to the door, straining to hear. Perhaps he had imagined it. Maybe the heat was playing tricks on his mind. Then he heard it again, clear this time, coming from just behind the door. "Please don't go." The voice was small and frightened, a little girl's voice, trembling with fear. "I'm scared." Marcus's protective instincts kicked in immediately. He kept his own voice gentle, barely above a whisper. I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart. Are you okay? A pause followed. Then the girl replied, No, I need help. Marcus glanced at his truck, then back at the door. He moved closer, speaking near the crack where the door met the frame. My name is Marcus. I'm a delivery driver. You probably saw my truck outside. Can you tell me your name? Another pause, longer this time. He could hear soft breathing on the other side of the door. Finally, the whisper came again. I'm Lily. Hi, Lily. Are you hurt? Can you open the door for me? I can't. Her voice cracked. Daddy's mad. He locked me in. He said if I make any noise. She trailed off, and Marcus could sense the terror in her silence. Marcus tried the doorknob, finding it locked as he suspected. He peered through the windows, but the blankets obstructed his view. How long have you been locked in, Lily? I don't know. The sun came up 2 times. Her voice quivered. There's no food in here, just old chips under my bed. Daddy, he gets mean when he drinks the brown bottles. He forgets to make food. Marcus felt his stomach tighten with anger, but kept his voice calm. When did you last see your daddy, Lily? He's upstairs. I hear him walking sometimes, breaking things. She paused, and Marcus heard a small sniffle. Please don't leave me. Everyone leaves me. I'm not leaving you, Lily. I promise. Marcus walked around the porch, searching for another way in. All the windows were locked or boarded up. He noticed more disturbing details, scratch marks on the windowsills, what looked like dried blood on one of the boards. Is there anyone else in the house with you? No, Mommy went away. Daddy said she's not coming back. Lily's voice dropped even lower. I'm not supposed to talk about Mommy. It makes him angry. Marcus returned to the door, not wanting to leave Lily alone for too long. How old are you, Lily? 7. I missed my birthday party at school. Daddy said I was bad and couldn't go. Marcus closed his eyes, fighting to control his emotions. His grandmother's voice echoed in his head. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stay calm when everything inside you is screaming. You're being very brave, Lily, he said. Can you tell me if there's a phone in the house or a way you could unlock the door? No phones. Daddy broke them all. He has one, but he keeps it with him. She hesitated. The door has lots of locks. I can't reach them all. Suddenly, a loud thud came from upstairs, followed by the sound of breaking glass. Lily gasped. He's coming, she whispered urgently. He'll be mad if he sees you. Marcus could hear heavy footsteps stumbling above, accompanied by slurred cursing. His heart raced as he quickly stepped back from the door and pulled out his phone. Lily, listen to me carefully, he whispered. I'm going to call for help. Stay quiet and hide if you need to, but don't worry. I'm not leaving. I'll be right here. I promise. Her voice was barely audible now. I promise. Remember, stay quiet. Marcus dialed 911 with trembling fingers, moving to the side of the porch where he could keep an eye on both the door and the upstairs windows. A dispatcher answered on the second ring. Woman, what's your emergency? Marcus kept his voice low but clear. My name is Marcus Thompson. I'm a FedEx driver making a delivery at 2487 Maple Street. There's a 7-year-old girl locked inside named Lily. She says her father has kept her locked up for at least 2 days without food. He's in the house right now, and I can hear him breaking things. She's terrified. I understand, sir. Are you in a safe location? Yes. I'm outside on the porch, but please hurry. I can hear him moving around up there, and she says he gets violent when he drinks. Officers are being dispatched now, the dispatcher assured him. Can you stay on the line? More crashes came from inside, followed by angry shouting. Marcus's heart leapt as he heard Lily whimper behind the door. Yes, I'll stay on the line, but I need to keep Lily calm. She's right by the door. That's fine, sir. Officers are 4 minutes out. Try to keep both yourself and the child calm and quiet. Marcus moved back to the door, speaking as softly as he could. Lily, are you still there? Yes, came the faintest whisper. I'm scared. He's breaking Mommy's pictures again. It's okay to be scared, Lily, Marcus soothed while keeping the phone to his ear. But help is coming. Want to know something? I used to be scared a lot when I was your age." "You did?" The surprise in her voice was clear, even in a whisper. "Sure did, but my grandmother taught me a special trick. Want to hear it?" "Yes, please." "She told me to close my eyes and think of my favorite color." "What's yours?" "Purple," Lily whispered, "like the flowers Mommy used to grow." "That's a beautiful color. Now imagine you're wrapped up in a big warm purple blanket. It's magic, and nothing bad can get through it. Can you do that?" Her voice steadied slightly. "Is it okay if I imagine it has butterflies on it?" "That's perfect. Those butterflies are your guardians. Each one of them is keeping a watchful eye over you." More crashes echoed from upstairs, now closer, and Marcus could hear the sound of a man's footsteps making their way toward the stairs. "What was that?" Lily's voice trembled again. "Just concentrate on your butterfly blanket, sweetheart. Tell me about the butterflies. What colors do you see?" "There are blue ones and yellow ones." She abruptly stopped as heavy footsteps began descending the stairs. "He's coming down. Stay quiet," Marcus urged, taking a deep breath. "Remember your butterfly blanket. Help is almost here." The dispatcher's voice crackled through the phone. "Officers are 1 minute away. Please maintain your position and ensure your safety." Marcus could hear the man stumbling down the stairs, knocking against the walls. Lily had gone completely silent, but he could still hear her shallow breathing behind the door. "Everything is going to be okay," he whispered, as much for his own reassurance as for Lily's. His grandmother's words echoed in his mind. Sometimes God puts us in the right place at the right time for a reason. In the distance, he could hear sirens approaching. Help was on the way. He just hoped it would arrive before the father discovered that his daughter had reached out for assistance. Sometimes the longest moments in life last only seconds, but feel like an eternity. As Marcus stood there, listening to the heavy footsteps drawing nearer to the front of the house, those seconds stretched into what felt like forever. Yet he kept his promise. He didn't leave. He wouldn't leave, not until Lily was safe. The butterflies in her imaginary blanket weren't the only ones watching over her now. Marcus Thompson, a FedEx driver turned unexpected guardian angel, stood his ground, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. He pressed himself against the wall beside the door, his heart racing as James Wilson's heavy footsteps grew closer. The sirens were still too distant, their wailing a faint promise of salvation. His eyes darted to the door's hinges, assessing their strength. Could he break the door down if it came to that? Should he even attempt it? "They're coming, Lily," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Just stay quiet for me, okay?" Through the crack in the door, he heard her tiny response. "I'm under the table, like you said." The footsteps halted somewhere in the middle of the house, followed by the sound of glass crunching under boots and the unmistakable noise of a bottle being set down hard on a surface. Marcus held his breath, listening intently. "Lily!" The man's voice slurred thickly. "You better not be making noise again." Marcus's fists clenched involuntarily. Through the window, he caught glimpses of a tall figure stumbling through what must be the living room. James Wilson was a large man, easily standing at 6'3", with unkempt dark hair and several days' worth of stubble on his face. His T-shirt was stained, and he moved with the unsteady gait of someone who had been drinking heavily. "Your daddy." Lily's whisper was so faint that Marcus almost missed it. "It used to be different before Mommy." "What happened to your mommy, Lily?" Marcus kept his voice gentle, though his eyes remained fixed on the window where he could see James moving around. "She got really sick. Daddy said the doctors couldn't help her." Lily's voice caught. "After she went to heaven, Daddy started drinking the brown bottles. He said looking at me hurts because I look like her." Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, his heart aching at her words. The sirens were getting closer, but still not close enough. "You won't let me go outside anymore," Lily continued, her words tumbling out as if she had been holding them in forever. I miss the last day of first grade, my friend Katie's birthday party, and the ice cream truck that comes every Tuesday, but I can't." She broke off as another crash sounded from inside. Marcus peered through the window again. James had knocked over a lamp and was now standing in front of what appeared to be a wall of photos. Even from this distance, Marcus could see that they were all of the same woman, beautiful, with long dark hair and Lily's delicate features. "I haven't had real food in so long," Lily whispered. "Just the chips I found and some crackers. The water from the bathroom sink tastes funny." Marcus glanced at his truck, where he knew he had a sandwich and a water bottle in his lunch bag, but there was no way to get them to her, and that thought made his frustration surge. He looked back at the door, wondering if he could kick it in, but if he failed, if James heard him. "You're so brave, Lily," he said instead, pushing down his anger. "You did exactly the right thing by asking for help. I'm going to make sure you're safe. I promise." The hope in her voice nearly broke him. "I promise. And you know what my grandmother always said? Promises are sacred. They're like invisible strings that connect our hearts." A small sound came from behind the door, almost like a laugh, but tinged with sadness. "I like that. Did your grandmother teach you lots of things?" "She sure did. She raised me after my parents went to heaven, just like your mommy." Marcus kept his voice steady, though his eyes were fixed on James, who was now running his hands over the photos on the wall. "She taught me that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means doing the right thing even when you are scared." The sirens grew louder now. James's head snapped up at the sound, and he stumbled away from the photo wall. "Someone's coming," he slurred loudly. "Lily, did you do something?" Marcus heard Lily's frightened gasp through the window. He could see James turning in circles, his movements becoming increasingly agitated. "I'm going to check outside," James called out. "And if you've been making noise—" Marcus's mind raced. He could try to rush the door now before James got there. He was in good shape. All those years of lifting packages had kept him strong. But if he failed, if James was armed— The image of Lily hiding under that table, hungry and afraid, made him clench his fists, yet his grandmother's voice echoed in his mind again. Sometimes the bravest thing is being smart enough to wait for help. The decision was made for him as two police cruisers rounded the corner, their sirens cutting off as they approached the house. James stumbled back from the window, cursing. 4 officers emerged from the vehicles, moving quickly but cautiously. Marcus waved them over, speaking in urgent whispers. "The girl's name is Lily. She's 7, been locked in for at least 2 days without proper food. Her father's inside, drunk and violent. I've been talking to her through the door. She's hiding under a table." The lead officer, a woman with short grey hair and steady eyes, nodded sharply. "I'm Sergeant Rivera. Where was he?" "Last I saw, he was in the living room, straight ahead when you enter. He was by the wall of photos, a big guy, unstable on his feet." Rivera gestured to her colleagues, their movements precise and practiced. 2 officers moved to the back of the house while she and her partner approached the front door. "Police, open up!" Rivera's voice rang out with authority. Silence from inside, then the sound of something else breaking. "Mr. Wilson, this is the police. We need you to open the door now." More crashes followed, then James's voice, angry and slurred. "Get off my property. I ain't done nothing wrong. Last chance, Mr. Wilson. Open the door or we're coming in." When no response came, Rivera nodded to her partner. He stepped back and kicked the door hard near the lock. The wood splintered but held. A second kick, and the door burst inward. Marcus stayed on the porch, his heart in his throat as the officers entered with their weapons drawn. He could hear them announcing their presence. "Lily," he called softly, "the police are here to help. Stay under your table, okay? Everything's going to be all right now." The sounds of a struggle erupted from inside, shouting, something heavy falling. Then Rivera's voice. "Suspect secured. Find the girl." Marcus peered through the doorway. The house was dark, the air stale with the smell of alcohol and neglect. James was face down on the floor, Rivera's partner handcuffing him while he continued to struggle and curse. "Under the table," Marcus called to the officers searching the house. In the corner, one officer who had gone around back was checking behind a couch. At Marcus's words, he moved to a small table in the corner, its surface cluttered with empty bottles and old mail. He crouched down slowly. "Lily, I'm Officer Chun. We're here to help." Marcus held his breath for a moment. Nothing moved. Then, slowly, a small figure emerged from under the table. Lily was tiny for her age, her dark hair tangled and unwashed. She wore a stained T-shirt that was too big for her and clutched a ratty blanket that might once have been purple. Her face was pale and drawn, with dark circles under her eyes that no child should have. She looked around fearfully, shrinking back when she saw her father being lifted to his feet. Then her eyes found Marcus in the doorway. "Marcus?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Is that really you?" "It's me, Lily," he said softly. "You're safe now, just like I promised." She took a small step forward, then another. Officer Chun reached out to steady her when she swayed slightly. "The butterfly blanket," she said, looking down at the worn fabric in her hands. "It worked, just like you said." Marcus felt tears welling in his eyes as he watched Officer Chun lift her gently. She was so small, so fragile, but she had survived. She had been brave enough to whisper for help, and now she was safe. As they carried her past her father, Lily turned her face away, pressing it into Officer Chun's shoulder. James, his hands cuffed behind him, suddenly seemed to deflate. "Lily," his voice cracked. "Baby, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." But Lily kept her face hidden, her small hands clutching her blanket and Officer Chun's uniform. As they passed Marcus in the doorway, she lifted her head slightly. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not leaving." Marcus watched as they carried her to the waiting ambulance, his grandmother's words echoing in his mind. "Sometimes God puts us in the right place at the right time for a reason." Today, that reason had been Lily. James Wilson's rage exploded as the officers attempted to lead him from the house. Despite the handcuffs, he thrashed violently, his face contorted with anger and desperation. "This is my house," he roared, trying to twist away from Officer Rivera's grip. "You can't take my little girl. She's all I have left." "Stop resisting, Mr. Wilson," Rivera commanded firmly, while her partner, Officer Brooks, maintained his hold. "You're only making this worse for yourself." James responded by attempting to hit Brooks, but the officer anticipated the move and sidestepped. In the process, James lost his balance, and both officers used the momentum to safely bring him to the ground. "I don't need help," James slurred, his face pressed against the worn carpet. "I'm taking care of my daughter just fine." By keeping her locked up, Rivera's voice was steel. By starving her. The fight seemed to drain from James, suddenly replaced by broken sobs. "I'm sorry, Laura, I couldn't do it without you." While the officers dealt with James, Marcus watched Officer Chun carrying Lily out of the house. In the daylight, her condition was even more apparent. Her dark hair hung in matted tangles around a face that was far too pale. The oversized T-shirt she wore might have once been pink, but was now a dingy grey, hanging like a ghost around her thin frame. Her bare feet were dirty, with small cuts that indicated she had walked on broken glass. Marcus instinctively took a step forward. "Is she okay?" Lily's head lifted slightly at his voice, her eyes large and brown like her mother's in the photos. "Marcus?" she whispered hoarsely. "I'm right here, sweetheart," he assured her, his heart breaking at how small and fragile she looked in Officer Chun's arms. "Thank you," she managed, clutching her ragged purple blanket tighter. The wail of another siren announced the arrival of an ambulance. 2 paramedics quickly emerged, one a woman with auburn hair pulled back in a tight braid, and the other a younger man carrying medical equipment. "I'm Sarah, and this is Mike." The female paramedic introduced herself, her voice gentle as she approached Lily. "We're going to take good care of you, okay?" Officer Chun carried Lily to the ambulance, where the paramedics had set up their equipment. As they began their examination, Marcus overheard their quiet observations. Significant malnourishment, dehydration, multiple bruises in various stages of healing, small lacerations on her feet and hands. "Can you tell me if anything hurts, sweetheart?" Sarah asked softly as she worked. "My tummy," Lily whispered, "and my head. Sometimes the lights are too bright." While the paramedics attended to Lily, Marcus noticed Sergeant Rivera speaking with another officer who had just arrived. Their voices carried in the morning air. James Wilson, the new officer, read from his tablet. Multiple priors for domestic violence against his late wife Laura. 2 complaints of child neglect filed by Lily's school, but the cases were dropped when he cleaned up his act enough to pass inspection. Laura died of cancer 8 months ago. Rivera shook her head, and no one followed up after that. "The system's overloaded," the officer replied grimly. "Too many cases, not enough workers." The commotion had drawn the attention of the neighbors. Several stood on their porches or sidewalks, watching the scene unfold with a mixture of shock and guilt on their faces. An elderly woman approached Marcus, wringing her hands. "I live next door," she said, her voice trembling. "Sometimes at night I thought I heard crying." She trailed off, tears welling in her eyes. "I should have done something." A middle-aged man joined them, his face drawn. "We all should have. I saw him bringing in case after case of whiskey, but never any groceries. I told myself it wasn't my business." Marcus felt a complex mix of emotions surge through him, relief that Lily was finally getting help, but also anger at how long she had suffered in silence. How many people had heard her cries and turned away? How many had seen the signs but chosen not to get involved? His grandmother's words echoed in his mind. "Indifference is the opposite of love, baby. Sometimes the worst sin isn't doing wrong, but seeing wrong and doing nothing." Near the ambulance, James was being placed in the back of a police car. His anger had dissolved into tears, and he kept mumbling his late wife's name. Marcus caught fragments of his broken monologue. "Laura, I tried. She looked so much like you, I couldn't bear to look at her. I couldn't bear to let her go." The paramedics were finishing their initial assessment of Lily. Mike was applying bandages to her feet while Sarah prepared an IV line. "We need to get her to Atlanta General Hospital," Sarah announced. "She's severely dehydrated, and we need to run more comprehensive tests." Marcus moved closer to the ambulance. "Lily, you're going to be okay now. The doctors are going to help you feel better." Lily reached out a small hand toward him, and Marcus gently took it. Her fingers felt icy, despite the summer warmth surrounding them. "Will you come too?" she asked, her voice small and filled with fear. Before Marcus could reply, Sarah interjected. "We need to get her to the hospital quickly," she said, her eyes warm as they met Marcus's. "But you can definitely visit her there." Lily's fingers tightened around Marcus's hand. "Promise?" she implored. "Remember what I told you about promises," Marcus replied softly. "They're like invisible strings that connect our hearts. I promise I'll come see you as soon as they say it's okay." A faint smile flickered across Lily's face, the first one Marcus had seen since their talk about the butterfly blanket. "With a butterfly blanket?" he confirmed, managing a smile of his own. The paramedics completed securing Lily for transport, and as they prepared to close the ambulance doors, Marcus caught one last glimpse of her small face, now adorned with an oxygen mask, but somehow appearing more peaceful than before. The neighbors had gathered in small clusters, watching as the ambulance pulled away, its siren silent now, but lights still flashing. The police car containing James followed, turning in the opposite direction toward the station. Officer Rivera approached Marcus, her notebook in hand. "We'll need a statement from you," she said. "But first," she added, "I want to express my gratitude. Most people would have simply left that package and driven away." Marcus watched the ambulance disappear around the corner, Lily's thank you still echoing in his ears. He thought of all the what-ifs. What if he had been running late today? What if someone else had taken this route? What if he hadn't heard that whisper? I couldn't leave, he replied simply. My grandmother always told me that sometimes God places us in certain situations for a reason. Today, that reason was Lily. Rivera nodded, understanding shining in her eyes. Well, that little girl is alive because you listened to your grandmother's wisdom. We'll need you to come down to the station later to make a formal statement, but for now... She handed him a card with the hospital's information. I have a feeling you'd rather head to Atlanta General Hospital first. Marcus took the card, already knowing he wouldn't be finishing his delivery route today. Beverly would understand. She'd probably insist on it, in fact. His gaze lingered on the house with its broken door now hanging ajar, the scattered toys in the yard, and the photos of Laura Wilson still visible through the window. So many people had looked away, so many had chosen not to get involved. But today, because one person chose to listen, to stay, to help, a little girl had a chance at a better life. As Marcus walked back to his truck, he sent up a silent prayer of thanks to his grandmother for teaching him to trust his instincts, and another for Lily, that she would heal, grow strong, and someday rediscover her smile. The morning sun had fully risen now, burning away the last shadows of dawn. Somewhere in an ambulance rushing toward help, a 7-year-old girl clutched a worn purple blanket and for the first time in a long while felt safe. Marcus knew with absolute certainty that the most important delivery of his day had nothing to do with packages at all. The children's wing of Atlanta General Hospital stood in stark contrast to the darkness of Lily's home. Bright murals of jungle animals adorned the walls, and somewhere down the hall Marcus could hear the joyful sounds of children laughing. He stood at the nurse's station, a purple stuffed butterfly clutched in his hands, his FedEx uniform replaced by jeans and a clean button-down shirt. "I'm here to see Lily Wilson," he said to the nurse, whose name tag read, "Patricia. I'm Marcus Thompson, the delivery driver." Recognition flickered in Patricia's eyes. "Oh yes, we've been expecting you. Let me call Miss Andrews, the social worker. She needs to speak with you first." While he waited, Marcus studied the butterfly he had purchased that morning. Its wings sparkled with silver glitter, and it was impossibly soft to the touch. He hoped it would remind Lily of their conversation about her protective butterfly blanket. "Mr. Thompson." He turned to find a woman in her 50s approaching, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a neat bun. She extended her hand. "I'm Rachel Andrews, Lily's social worker. Would you mind if we talked for a few minutes before you see her?" They settled into chairs in a small consultation room. Through the window, Marcus could see children playing in a courtyard garden below. "First, I want to thank you for what you did yesterday," Rachel began, her voice warm but professional. "You quite literally saved Lily's life. The doctors say she was severely dehydrated and malnourished. Another day or two." She left the sentence unfinished. Marcus gripped the butterfly tighter. "How is she doing?" he asked, concern lacing his voice. Rachel consulted her tablet. "Physically, she's responding well to treatment. They're reintroducing food slowly and monitoring her hydration levels. The cuts on her feet are healing, and the bruises—" She paused, her jaw tightening slightly. "Well, those will heal too." "What happened to her mother?" Marcus asked quietly. Rachel's expression softened with sadness. "Laura Wilson was diagnosed with aggressive pancreatic cancer last year. She fought hard, but—" She shook her head. "James Wilson was actually a good father once. He and Laura met in college. Both were teachers. He taught high school physics while she taught elementary school art. They were happy." She pulled up a photo on her tablet, a younger, clean-shaven James Wilson with his arms around a beautiful woman with Lily's dark hair and eyes. Between them stood a beaming Lily, maybe 5 years old, holding up a painting of a butterfly. "Laura's death broke something in James," Rachel continued. "He started drinking, lost his job, and Lily's school filed 2 reports of suspected neglect. But James would pull himself together just enough to pass inspection, then spiral again." Marcus thought of the wall of photos in the house, all of Laura. He couldn't look at Lily because she reminded him of her mother. Exactly, a classic transference of grief. But that's no excuse for what he did. Rachel sat down, her tablet in hand. Lily hasn't spoken much since arriving here. She's withdrawn, especially around male staff, but she did ask about you. Marcus looked up, surprised. She did. She wanted to know if you were real or if she'd imagined you. Trauma can sometimes make children question their memories, Rachel explained. Her eyes fell on the butterfly in his hands. Is that for her? Yes. We talked about butterflies yesterday when I was trying to keep her calm. I thought maybe it would be perfect. Rachel assured him. She needs positive associations right now. Speaking of which... She hesitated. Last night was difficult. She woke up several times from nightmares, crying that her father was coming to take her back. The staff had to remind her that she's safe, that there are security guards at every entrance. Marcus felt his chest tighten. She's afraid. It's common in abuse cases. Children often maintain emotional bonds with their abusers, even while fearing them. It's complicated by the fact that James wasn't always abusive. Lily remembers her before Daddy, the one who read her stories and took her to the park. That makes it harder to process the after Daddy who locked her away. A knock at the door interrupted them. Patricia, the nurse, poked her head in. Miss Andrews, Lily's asking for her butterfly blanket again. She seems anxious. Rachel stood. This might be a good time for your visit, Mr. Thompson, but I should warn you, she may not be ready to interact much. Don't be discouraged if she's withdrawn. They walked together to Lily's room. Through the window in the door, Marcus could see her sitting in the hospital bed, looking small against the white sheets. Her hair had been washed and braided, and she wore clean pink pajamas, but her face was still too pale, too thin. Rachel entered first. Lily, you have a visitor. Lily looked up, clutching her worn purple blanket. When she saw Marcus, her eyes widened. You came, she whispered. You're real. I promised, didn't I? Marcus smiled gently, staying near the door. And I brought someone who wanted to meet you. He held up the stuffed butterfly for a moment. Lily just stared, and then slowly she reached out one hand. Marcus approached carefully, aware of how she might be scared of adults, especially men. But when he got close enough, Lily suddenly launched herself forward, wrapping her arms around his waist. You didn't leave me, she exclaimed into his shirt. Everyone else left, but you stayed. Marcus felt tears prick at his eyes as he carefully hugged her back. Of course I stayed. Remember what I told you about promises. Lily pulled back slightly, looking up at him. They're like invisible strings connecting our hearts. That's right. He handed her the butterfly, watching as she ran her fingers over its glittery wings. It's so pretty, she whispered, like the ones Mommy used to paint. Your mom was an artist, Marcus said. Lily nodded, settling back against her pillows with the butterfly clutched to her chest. She painted butterflies everywhere, in my room, in her classroom. Her voice caught. Daddy painted over them after she went to heaven. He said they made him too sad. Marcus pulled a chair close to the bed, his heart aching as he thought about how close he'd come to just leaving that package and walking away. If he hadn't heard her whisper, if he'd been in a hurry. As if reading his thoughts, Rachel spoke softly from where she stood by the door. You can't focus on the what-ifs, Mr. Thompson. You did hear her. You did stay. That's what matters. Word of what had happened on Maple Street spread quickly through the neighborhood. As Marcus drove his route that morning, people stopped him to ask about Lily. The elderly neighbor who heard crying brought him a card to give her. The man who had seen James buying whiskey donated to a fund the hospital was setting up for her care. We should have done something, they all said. We knew something wasn't right. But they hadn't done anything. They'd looked away, told themselves it wasn't their business, assumed someone else would handle it. Can you tell me a story? Lily's small voice pulled him from his thoughts. About your grandmother. Marcus smiled, pushing away the dark what-ifs. Well, my grandmother loved butterflies too. She had a garden full of flowers to attract them. She used to tell me that butterflies were proof that beautiful changes could happen even when things seemed dark. Like how caterpillars turn into butterflies, Lily asked, her voice stronger now. Exactly. And you know what else she said? Sometimes people are like butterflies. They help others transform and grow just by being there. Lily considered this, stroking her new butterfly's wings. Is that why you helped me? Because you're like a butterfly person? Marcus felt something shift in his heart, a certainty, a decision he hadn't even known he was making until that moment. Looking at this brave little girl who had whispered for help when the world had forgotten her, he knew he couldn't just walk away once she left the hospital. Whatever happened next, he needed to be part of ensuring she had a better future. Maybe, he said softly, or maybe you're the butterfly, Lily. Maybe you're the one teaching all of us how to be braver and kinder. Lily smiled, a real smile that lit up her whole face, and hugged her butterfly closer. Can I name her Laura, like my mommy? That's a perfect name, Marcus said, watching as Lily's eyes began to droop with tiredness. Will you come back tomorrow? She asked, struggling to keep her eyes open, as long as it's okay with Miss Andrews. Marcus looked at the social worker, who nodded. Promise? I promise. Remember the invisible string? Lily nodded, finally letting her eyes close. It connects our hearts, she murmured, drifting off to sleep with both the old purple blanket and the new butterfly named Laura held tightly in her arms. Marcus stood quietly, careful not to wake her. Rachel walked with him to the door. You know, she said softly, we'll be looking for a foster placement once she's released from the hospital, someone stable, someone who can help her heal. Marcus looked back at Lily's sleeping form. How would someone apply to be a foster parent? Rachel smiled, as if she had been expecting the question. It's a long process. Background checks, home studies, training courses. Are you interested? Marcus thought of his grandmother, who had taken him in after his parents died, who had taught him about butterflies, promises, and doing the right thing even when it was hard. Yes, he said, I am. As he walked back to his truck, Marcus felt lighter somehow, despite the weight of the decision he had just made. His grandmother had always said that sometimes the best changes in life came disguised as challenges. Looking up at Lily's window, he smiled, thinking that maybe she had been right about that too. Like everything else, the weekend after meeting Lily, Marcus invited his closest friends over for dinner. As they sat around his modest dining table, the remains of Beverly's famous lasagna between them, he took a deep breath and shared his plans. I'm thinking of becoming Lily's foster parent, he said, watching their reactions carefully. Mike, his best friend since high school, set down his fork. The little girl from the delivery route? Marcus, that's a huge decision. Marcus picked up his glass of water, then set it down again without drinking. I know, he replied, but I can't explain it. When I heard her whisper through that door, it was like my grandmother was there, telling me this was what I needed to do. Beverly, his dispatch supervisor and friend, reached across the table to squeeze his hand. Your grandmother would be proud, honey, but have you thought about what this means? Being a single parent isn't easy. That's why I wanted to talk to you all, Marcus admitted. I need to know if I'm crazy for even considering this. Sarah, Mike's wife and an elementary school teacher, leaned forward. Not crazy, but you need to understand what you're getting into. Lily's been through severe trauma. She'll need therapy, stability, patience, and the system isn't exactly friendly to single men trying to foster. Mike added, especially black men. Marcus finished quietly. Yeah, I know. Miss Andrews, her social worker, already warned me about that. The conversation with Rachel Andrews earlier that week had been sobering. She had laid out all the challenges he'd face: intensive background checks, home studies, psychological evaluations, parenting classes, and financial scrutiny. The process can take months, she'd explained, and even then, there's no guarantee. The court typically prefers placing children with families. particularly in cases involving trauma. You'd need to prove you can provide not just physical care, but emotional support and stability. But then she'd smiled. However, you have something many applicants don't, an existing bond with Lily. She trusts you, which is remarkable given her experience with her father. Now, looking at his friends' concerned faces, Marcus felt that same determination he'd experienced in the hospital. I know it won't be easy, but I have to try. Beverly straightened in her chair. Well, you can count on me for a character reference letter. I'll tell them how you are with kids. He had never missed a single day of work in 15 years, how he knew every customer's name along his route, how he shared his lunch with that homeless veteran on 5th Street. And I'll write about how you help coach my son's baseball team, Mike added. How all the kids look up to you. I can speak to your understanding of children's needs, Sarah offered, and I know several child psychologists who might be willing to consult. Marcus felt tears welling in his eyes. Thank you, he managed to say, looking at all of them with gratitude. The following day, he visited Lily once more. She was sitting up in bed, looking noticeably stronger, her new butterfly toy still clutched tightly in her hands. Her face lit up when she saw him. "Look what the nurse brought me," she exclaimed, pointing to a small easel set up beside her bed where a colorful painting was drying. "Is that a butterfly garden?" Marcus asked, studying the bright swirls of purple and blue. "It looks like the one your grandmother had." Lily nodded enthusiastically. "And look, I painted this one to look like Laura." She pointed to a particularly detailed butterfly. "Mom taught me how to mix colors to get just the right shade of purple. She said every butterfly should be unique, just like people." Marcus settled into his usual chair. "Your mom sounds like she was a wonderful teacher." "She was the best." Lily's voice grew soft. "We used to have our special time every Sunday. She'd set up an easel in the backyard, and we'd paint together. Sometimes Dad would join us." She trailed off, her fingers twisting nervously in her blanket. "It's okay to miss those good memories," Marcus said gently. "Do you think I'll ever be like that again, like before?" Lily asked. Marcus chose his words carefully. "I don't know, sweetheart. But what I do know is that you deserve to be safe and happy no matter what." Lily was quiet for a moment before saying, "Mrs. Andrews says I'll need to go somewhere else when I leave the hospital, that I can't go home." "How do you feel about that?" Marcus inquired. "Scared," Lily admitted, "but also kind of relieved." "Is that bad?" "No, honey, that's not bad at all." The next week was a whirlwind of paperwork and appointments. Marcus submitted his initial fostering application, underwent fingerprinting, and started the required background checks. Rachel helped him navigate the process, but she didn't sugarcoat the challenges. "There's already been some pushback," she told him one afternoon. "Some people on the committee feel that a single man with no parenting experience isn't the best placement for a traumatized young girl." "What can I do to prove them wrong?" Marcus asked, determined. "Keep doing what you're doing. Show them your support system, your stability, and your commitment to Lily's well-being." The community rallied around him in ways he hadn't anticipated. His neighbors offered to help child-proof his house. Beverly adjusted his delivery route to accommodate future school runs. Sarah connected him with support groups for single parents and foster families. But not everyone was supportive. At the first foster parent training class, he overheard two women whispering, "A delivery driver. How can he afford to raise a child while living alone? It's not natural. Children need a mother." Marcus thought of his grandmother, who had raised him alone after his parents died. She worked 2 jobs but never missed a school play or a parent-teacher conference. She taught him that family wasn't about perfect circumstances, but about perfect love. Despite the whispers and doubts, he pressed on. He transformed his home office into a bedroom for Lily, painting the walls her favorite shade of purple. Beverly helped him pick out furniture, a white dresser, a bookshelf for art supplies, and a reading nook with soft pillows. "Every child needs a space that feels like their own," she said as they hung butterfly decals on the walls. Marcus added special touches, a nightlight that projected stars on the ceiling, a soft rug perfect for sitting and drawing, and a brand new easel in the corner. On the dresser, he placed a framed photo of Laura Wilson that Rachel had given him, showing her painting with a young Lily in their backyard. She should have memories of her mother's love surrounding her, he explained, when Sarah questioned if it might be too soon. His friends helped him stock the kitchen with healthy foods, child-sized plates, and step stools so Lily could reach the sink. Mike installed extra safety locks and a security system, saying quietly, "Not just for Lily's safety, but for your peace of mind. She needs to know she's protected." One evening, as Marcus was organizing art supplies in Lily's new room, his phone rang. It was Rachel. "The initial home study went well," she said, "but the committee still has concerns. They're questioning whether you can handle a child with Lily's specific needs." Marcus sat on the purple bedspread he had chosen because it matched Lily's butterfly toy. "What does Lily want?" he asked. There was a pause, then Rachel's voice softened. "She asks for you every day when we talk about future placements. She gets anxious unless we mention your name. The hospital staff say you're the only person she fully trusts." "Then I'll keep fighting," Marcus said simply. "My grandmother taught me that anything worth having is worth fighting for." "Speaking of fighting," Rachel hesitated, "James Wilson's lawyer is arguing for rehabilitation and supervised visitation." Marcus's hand tightened on the phone. "What does that mean for Lily?" "It means we need to move quickly with the temporary guardianship application. Are you sure you're ready for this? It won't be easy." Marcus looked around the room he had created for Lily, at the butterflies on the walls and the easel waiting for her art. He thought of her smile when she painted, of her trust when she shared memories of her mother, and of her courage in whispering for help when the world had forgotten her. "I'm sure," he said, "Lily deserves a chance at a real childhood, at healing, at being the butterfly she was meant to be. Whatever it takes, I'm in this for the long haul." As he hung up, Marcus walked to the window. The spare room had the best view of his small backyard, where he had already started planting a butterfly garden. His grandmother had always said that butterflies were attracted to love and patience, just like children. Looking at the empty flower beds, Marcus made a silent promise, not just to Lily, but to himself and to his grandmother's memory. He would create a home where a little girl could heal, grow, and spread her wings. No matter what challenges lay ahead, he would face them with the same courage Lily had shown in whispering through that door. Sometimes the best families weren't the ones you were born into, but the ones you chose to build, one butterfly at a time. The Atlanta family court building loomed before Marcus as he straightened his tie one last time. The morning sun cast long shadows across the courthouse steps, where Beverly and Mike were already waiting, dressed in their Sunday best. "You ready?" Beverly asked, smoothing an imaginary wrinkle from Marcus's suit jacket, the same one he had worn to his grandmother's funeral. "As ready as I'll ever be," Marcus replied, his voice steady despite the butterflies fluttering in his stomach. Inside the courtroom, Rachel Andrews was already seated at one of the tables, reviewing her notes. She looked up as Marcus entered, giving him an encouraging smile. The other table was occupied by James Wilson's attorney, a sharp-featured woman in an expensive suit. James himself sat behind his lawyer, looking both better and worse than the last time Marcus had seen him. He was clean-shaven now, wearing a pressed shirt, but his hands trembled slightly, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. As more people filed in, Marcus recognized familiar faces: Sarah from the hospital, Officer Rivera, neighbors from Maple Street. Even old Joe from the hardware store had come, clutching an envelope that Marcus knew contained a letter of support. "The court is now in session," the bailiff's voice rang out. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Martinez." Judge Martinez was a small woman with steel-gray hair and alert eyes that seemed to miss nothing as she surveyed the courtroom. "Be seated," she said. "We're here today regarding the temporary custody of Lily Wilson, case number 2024, JC 542. Let's begin with the social worker's testimony. Rachel approached the witness stand, her heels clicking against the polished floor. For the next 20 minutes, she detailed Lily's rescue, her physical and emotional condition, and her progress over the past weeks. In my 15 years as a social worker, Rachel concluded, I've rarely seen such a strong and positive bond develop between a foster candidate and a child. Mr. Thompson has shown exceptional dedication to Lily's well-being. James's lawyer stood for cross-examination. Ms. Andrews, isn't it true that Mr. Thompson has no experience as a parent and no training in dealing with traumatized children? Mr. Thompson has completed all required foster parent training courses with excellent evaluations, Rachel replied calmly. He's also enrolled in additional child psychology workshops and has joined support groups for single parents. More witnesses followed. Officer Rivera described finding Lily that day. The hospital staff testified about her physical condition and her remarkable progress in Marcus's presence. Neighbors admitted their shame at not acting sooner, but spoke of Marcus's character and his positive influence in the community. Then it was Marcus's turn. As he took the stand, he caught sight of Lily being led into the courtroom by a court advocate. She wore a purple dress Beverly had helped pick out and clutched her butterfly toy tightly. When she saw Marcus, her face lit up with a small smile. "Mr. Thompson," Judge Martinez said, "please tell us why you're seeking temporary custody of Lily Wilson." Marcus took a deep breath, remembering his grandmother's advice. "Speak from your heart, baby. Truth has its own power." "Your Honor, I wasn't looking to become a father that day on my delivery route, but when I heard Lily's whisper through that door, something changed. My grandmother raised me after my parents died, and she always said that sometimes God puts us exactly where we need to be." He described the moments at the door, the fear in Lily's voice, and the trust she placed in him. "She reminded me of myself at that age, scared, lost, needing someone to believe in. My grandmother saved me by taking me in. Now I have a chance to do the same for Lily." James's lawyer stood. "Mr. Thompson, how can you possibly provide the kind of care a traumatized child needs while working full-time as a delivery driver?" "The same way my grandmother did while working 2 jobs," Marcus replied steadily. "With love, dedication, and a strong support system. My supervisor has already adjusted my route to accommodate school hours. I have friends and neighbors willing to help, and most importantly, I have a commitment to putting Lily's needs first." "Wouldn't Lily be better off with a traditional 2-parent family, one with experience raising children?" Marcus met the lawyer's eyes. "With all due respect, Lily had a traditional family. What she needs now isn't traditional. It's someone who understands loss, who knows how to rebuild trust, and who can help her heal. I may not be the obvious choice, but I'm the one she trusts." More questions followed about his finances, his home, and his qualifications. Marcus answered each one honestly, neither defensive nor apologetic. When he finished, Judge Martinez called for a brief recess. During the break, Marcus noticed James Wilson approaching hesitantly. "I know I messed up," James said quietly. "After Laura died, I couldn't handle it. Lily looks so much like her." "She's not Laura," Marcus replied gently but firmly. "She's Lily, and she deserves a chance to be herself, not a reminder of what you lost." James nodded, tears in his eyes. "I know. That's why I told my lawyer to withdraw the objection to your custody petition. Lily needs someone who sees her for who she is." When court resumed, the judge called Lily forward. The little girl approached the bench, still clutching her butterfly. "Lily," Judge Martinez said kindly, "I know this is scary, but can you tell me how you feel about possibly living with Mr. Thompson?" Lily looked at Marcus, then back at the judge. Her voice was small but clear. "I want to stay with Marcus. He saved me." "Can you tell me why you feel safe with him?" the judge asked. "He keeps his promises. He didn't leave me when I was scared," she said, hugging her butterfly closer. "He understands about butterflies, like Mommy did. He's making a garden for them at his house." Judge Martinez leaned forward. A butterfly garden. Yes, because his grandmother taught him that butterflies are like hope. They come back even after the dark times. There wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. Even James's lawyer dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. The judge studied the papers before her, including the stack of letters from the community. Finally, she looked up. Having heard all testimony and reviewed all evidence, I'm ready to make my decision. She paused, surveying the courtroom. The purpose of this court is to act in the best interest of the child. Sometimes that means looking beyond conventional solutions to find what a particular child truly needs. She turned to Marcus. Mr. Thompson, your commitment to Lily's well-being is evident. You've demonstrated not just the desire to provide for her, but the wisdom to seek help when needed, and the strength to fight for what you believe is right. To James, she said, Mr. Wilson, your decision to support this placement shows growth and understanding of your daughter's needs. I strongly encourage you to continue your rehabilitation program. Finally, to Lily, she said, Young lady, you've shown remarkable courage throughout this ordeal. I believe you deserve a chance to heal and grow in an environment where you feel safe and understood. Judge Martinez straightened her papers. I hereby grant temporary custody of Lily Wilson to Marcus Thompson, with a review scheduled in 6 months. Mr. Thompson, the court entrusts you with this child's care and well-being. Do you accept this responsibility? I do, Your Honor, Marcus said firmly. Then this court is adjourned. The bang of the gavel had barely faded. When Lily dashed toward Marcus, throwing herself into his embrace, he lifted her up, holding her tightly as tears streamed down both of their faces. We did it, Butterfly, he whispered softly. We accomplished it. Beverly appeared with tissues in hand, while Mike gave Marcus a supportive pat on the shoulder. Rachel radiated joy through her own tears, and even Officer Rivera wore a smile as they exited the courthouse, Lily still nestled in Marcus's arms. The morning sun had risen high in the sky, and a real butterfly, adorned in shades of purple and gold, fluttered past them, causing Lily to gasp in delight. Look, she pointed excitedly. It's like Mommy and your grandmother are saying hello. Marcus smiled, thinking of the 2 strong women who had taught him about love, courage, and the transformative power of second chances. Now it was his turn to pass those invaluable lessons on. Together, he and Lily descended the courthouse steps, ready to embark on their new life as a family. It wouldn't always be easy, but the best things in life rarely were. What truly mattered was that they would face whatever challenges lay ahead together. Just like butterflies, they had emerged from their dark cocoons into something new and beautiful, and they were prepared to soar. The first morning of their new life together began with pancakes, or at least an attempt at making pancakes. Marcus stared at the misshapen blob sizzling in the pan, while Lily giggled from her perch on a kitchen stool. I think that one looks like a turtle, she said diplomatically. Marcus chuckled as he carefully attempted to flip the pancake. Your mom was the artist, not me, but I promise I'll improve at this. Can I help? Lily asked, already reaching for the mixing bowl. Sure, Butterfly, just be cautious. But before he could finish his sentence, a cloud of flour poofed into the air, coating both of them in a fine white powder. They exchanged glances for a moment before bursting out in laughter. It was the kind of laughter that heals, that breaks down barriers, and that transforms a house into a home. The first few weeks were a delicate dance of adjusting routines and learning each other's rhythms. Marcus discovered that Lily preferred her sandwiches cut diagonally because it tastes better that way. He learned that she hummed while drawing and that she still needed a nightlight, even though she insisted she wasn't afraid of the dark. Lily learned that Marcus sang old Motown songs while washing the dishes, that he could fix almost anything with his trusty toolbox, and that he always kept his promises. The therapy sessions proved to be more challenging. Dr. Sarah Chin's office was painted in soothing colors, equipped with a sand tray and art supplies for young clients. During the first session, Lily clutched her butterfly toy tightly, speaking barely above a whisper. It's okay to feel scared. Dr. Chin assured her. "We'll go at your pace." Marcus sat in on some of the sessions, learning how to help Lily process her trauma. He gained insights into triggers, coping mechanisms, and the importance of maintaining a routine. "You're doing great," Dr. Chin told him after one particularly difficult session where Lily had finally opened up about the day her mother passed away. "Your patience is exactly what she needs." School was another significant milestone. Cedar Grove Elementary's principal, Mrs. Rodriguez, welcomed them warmly, but Marcus still felt his heart racing as he walked Lily to her second-grade classroom. "What if they don't like me?" Lily whispered, gripping his hand tightly. Marcus knelt down to her level and reminded her, "Remember what we said about butterflies? They're brave even when they're scared." "That's right, and you're my brave butterfly," he affirmed, straightening her purple backpack. "I'll be right here when school ends." He watched through the classroom window as a little girl with braids approached Lily, admiring her butterfly hair clips. By pickup time, the two girls were chattering excitedly about their favorite colors and books. The community support amazed him every day. Beverly organized a meal train for their first month, and old Joe from the hardware store built a proper easel for Lily's art projects. The Rodriguez kids from Marcus's delivery route shared their old books and toys, while Sarah, Mike's wife, became their go-to babysitter for early deliveries. She taught Lily how to bake cookies and helped her with homework. "It takes a village," Beverly reminded Marcus when he tried to thank everyone. "We're your village." The transformation in Lily was like witnessing a flower bloom. The nightmares became less frequent, and she started singing while she painted. Her smile, once so rare, became a daily gift. One afternoon, Marcus returned home to find Lily teaching Katie, her new best friend, how to draw butterflies. "You have to make the wings match," Lily explained seriously. "But they don't have to be perfect. Mom always said nature isn't perfect, it's just beautiful." Marcus leaned against the doorframe, his heart swelling with pride. 2 months ago, this same little girl had been whispering for help through a locked door. Now she was sharing her mother's wisdom, healing through art and friendship. His own growth surprised him as well. He learned how to braid hair thanks to YouTube tutorials, how to navigate parent-teacher conferences, and how to balance work and home life. He discovered reserves of patience he never knew existed, and a capacity for love that seemed limitless. One day at work, Beverly observed, "You're different, Marcus. Lighter somehow, happier." "Lily changed everything," he admitted. "She makes me want to be better, to do better." The biggest surprise came 3 months after the court hearing, when the community organized a barbecue in Marcus's backyard, which had been transformed into a beautiful butterfly garden, thanks to old Joe's expertise. As Lily showed Katie the newly emerged monarchs, Beverly called everyone's attention. "We all know Marcus would never ask for help," she began, "but we wanted to do something special for this new family." She handed Marcus an envelope, and inside was a certificate for a college savings account, already seeded with contributions from neighbors, colleagues, and friends for Lily's future. "Because we believe in both of you," Beverly explained, her eyes misting with emotion. Marcus tried to speak, but the overwhelming feelings choked his words. Lily ran to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "Are you crying, Marcus?" "Happy tears, butterfly," he replied, "like rain that helps flowers grow." Later that evening, as the sun painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, Marcus and Lily sat on their porch swing. The butterfly garden buzzed with late summer activity, and the aroma of Beverly's famous peach cobbler still lingered in the air. "Marcus," Lily said softly, leaning against his side, "I'm glad you heard me that day when I whispered." Marcus pulled her closer. "Me too, butterfly, me too." "Do you think Mom and your grandmother can see us from heaven?" Lily asked. Marcus looked at the garden where 2 purple butterflies danced around the zinnias. "I think they've been watching over us all along." "Like guardian angel butterflies?" Lily asked. "Exactly like that," he affirmed. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun sink lower. So much had changed in just a few months. It felt as though they had always been meant to find each other. Marcus reflected on the day everything changed. A routine delivery, a whispered plea, a choice to stop and listen. His grandmother had always said that love wasn't about blood or boundaries, but about the courage to open your heart when it mattered most. Lily yawned, curling closer to him. "Can we have pancakes tomorrow?" "Sure we can. Maybe we'll even make them butterfly-shaped," she giggled. "They'll probably look like turtles again." Marcus smiled. "Probably," he agreed, grinning. "But that's okay. We've got plenty of time to practice." As darkness settled around them, fireflies began to twinkle in the garden like earthbound stars. The porch light cast a warm glow, and somewhere down the street, children's laughter floated on the evening breeze. This was home now, not just the house, but the feeling of belonging, of family chosen and made stronger through love. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, with the wisdom of two guardian angels watching over them, and a garden full of butterflies to remind them that beautiful changes were always possible. The little girl who had whispered for help and the man who had stopped to listen had transformed each other's lives in ways neither could have imagined. Like butterflies emerging from their chrysalises, they had become something new and wonderful together, and this was just the beginning of their story. Marcus kissed the top of Lily's head, already planning tomorrow's pancake adventure. The future stretched before them like an open road, filled with possibilities and promise. Sometimes the best destinations weren't the ones you planned, but the ones that found you when you were brave enough to listen to a whisper and kind enough to stay. For Marcus and Lily, that whisper had led them home. The end. What would you do if you heard a whisper crying out for help? Would you have the courage to stop and listen? Marcus and Lily's story reminds us that sometimes the most precious deliveries aren't packages at all, but the chances we get to change someone's life. If their journey touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more stories that celebrate the power of choosing kindness and the magic of new beginnings. Until next time, remember that sometimes all it takes is one person willing to stay. See you in the next one.